Ah,
Love it. Well, should we
yeah.
should we do some kind of intro?
Well, I was just going to say it feels good to be back on the Assembly of Silence radio hour.
Season X. How could we have a
Not
season
to be
without?
confused with Platform X. This is just Season X.
That's right. I was contemplating whether there was going to be that kind of sense of, my somehow supporting Elon's project by calling this Season X, but I don't know. I think the the unknown factor is really what this season is about, and that's certainly what X is all about. And I think, in many respects, the platform X remains an unknown factor. So we'll see. I think there are, as with all other things, good and bad signs abounding. So try to
It's
maintain a neutral stance on it all.
yeah. I really appreciate it. I think it's the last email you sent out through Taiji Reality
Yeah,
about the video you got from your brother. Was it your brother or your
cousin. Yeah,
cousin? Your
yep.
cousin in your response. And I thought that was a fairly responsible response.
Thanks. I've been getting a lot of flack for it. So.
Oh, I'm sure you were from the family, or
Well,
people
mostly
in
the
general.
family has been silent. You
they've
know,
gone they've gone radio silence. I'm
pretty
familiar.
much. Yeah, I got one response from another cousin, and she basically said that she didn't have the bandwidth to read what I wrote. My brother said that he wasn't surprised by anything in the document that I had sent, which was, a relatively positive response. But everyone else has been essentially completely silent about it. But other people, so originally this was sent out as a response to the email that was sent to me, and it was just on the email. And then I published essentially what I had worked on in that to the Taiji Reality Substack. And so I've gotten some feedback from some old friends who I'm
Have
probably going to.
resurfaced.
Yeah, they've been lurking in the background for a while without really having said much, but one in particular decided to pipe up about it, and I've had a exchange with him that I think is worth publishing, so I'm probably going to publish that too. But it really is, I think of the very few things that we can actually do, those of us who aren't in the halls of power, is to try to maintain civil society.
Yeah.
And I think that has
Right.
been lost as a result of the escalation of political polarization. And I consider it to be, extremely dangerous and something that really needs to be thought about carefully by both sides,
Mm-hmm.
And as someone I don't really identify with either side, I guess that falls upon me to try to make a case for, some degree of understanding. It's kind of late in the game on all of that. I think that people have been entrenched now for years in the conviction that the other side is
Right.
absolute evil. And what's really happening as a result of the escalation is that both sides are becoming increasingly evil. So I don't know.
Well, it's just what will happen is what always happens, and the inevitability is as they begin demonizing each other, then the next thing you do is you dehumanize the other, and the next thing you do is now you can wage violence on the other because they're no longer human, and that's the path that this typically goes.
Yeah.
Right. So,
yep. It seems obvious to those of us who can see it, and I suppose the people who are in the grip of one or the other of the, let's say, the blue or the red team's ideology, they think they're engaged in an existential battle with evil. And in some respects, that has become true. It's just that they're not recognizing that the evil is a cooperative venture between the people who are running the show, who, I'm theorizing in this piece that they are essentially playing both sides, and that the duopoly is essentially a fake game that's designed to create this divide and conquer mechanism within the population.
Yeah. What I would say is what the evil that they don't see is the partisanship. The partisanship is the evil.
Yeah.
And it's one of the greatest evils, in fact. I think.
Well, it's something which masks the evil of the let's say, those who are really running the show.
Right.
It creates a drama that people can get involved with while things are happening in the background that will undermine everyone's life. Have already undermined everyone's life, and which will continue. I don't think that people in this country understand how bad things can get when society can't come to any kind of an understanding with itself.
Right.
And I think that this is a play that's been made many times in other nations that has resulted in absolute catastrophe, and they're very good at doing this kind of thing. They really have turned it into a science. And so it's just incredibly sad, frustrating, and frightening to see people participating in it and essentially bringing about our demise by their own volition. I mean, I guess, to some extent, they're being coerced into it. So their own volition is maybe not the right way to say it, but they are making a choice. And from a reasonable point of view, you could understand the mechanism of what's happening and just abide by some of the basic principles that our society was supposedly founded on. I mean, it's never really been practiced, but there are ideas that were, this kind of, a society that embraces these a multiplicity of perspectives, and that we work things out through civil discourse. But I mean, you can see from the recent hearings that even at at the top levels of government, the discourse is pretty pathetic. And really, there's no interest in actual discourse. It's really just this sort of grandstanding and demonization of the other.
Well, I think there's this perception, perhaps, that people that are in government are intelligent, or
right, yeah,
right. And the reality is that really, actually, not all of them are.
Yeah, some of them are.
Some are, sure. Yeah. And some are brilliant educationally and stupid in other ways, right? And so, or incapable of healthy communication, and incapable of hearing a viewpoint that is opposite of their own, and not feeling the need to have to believe it, but just at least hear it, right? And I'm just going to bring this into a little higher dimension here, and that is many years ago, I did a course of some teachings by Rudolf Steiner on the celestial hierarchies, and so you have the hierarchies that go up, the higher celestial.
Yeah, this is something that we've had a long kind of, I don't know if debate is quite the right word, but we've been. Let's say we've been in discourse on this subject for many years.
Yeah. This is a long-standing conversation for you and I. And I'll just preface this for everybody out there, whether they're real or not, I don't know. We're just going to say this is the perspective of one individual, and so you have these. But it seems to be something that's been handed down from antiquity to today. Anyways. So you have celestial hierarchies, and you also have lower hierarchy, like a lower celestial beings, right? So um, we'll say you know, you have the good and the bad, right? So to speak. If we were to depolarize it, is it bad? I don't know. But one of the destructive hierarchies, he claimed was partisanship.
Hmm.
And because its only purpose is to divide people, there is no other purpose to it than to divide people. And and it works really well. It's a phenomenal evil on this planet to prevent cooperation, to prevent people from getting help that they need, to prevent a country from functioning, to prevent humanity from functioning as a unit, right?
Yeah.
Really. I mean, like if we look at like an ant colony, how like what a well-oiled biological phenomena that is, where they do everything for the colony. We can't do anything even for just our own families, let alone a greater, a nation, a continent, let alone the global population.
Well, I think we can to some extent, but we're constantly confronted with all the friction that happens as a result of the efforts on those on the other side. And there's always someone willing to take the other side.
That's right.
In some ways, this is the problem with let's say, a society which supposedly allows the freedom of expression of the individual, because the individual can go in whatever direction they want to, and it creates a kind of chaos, and then it allows malevolent actors to leverage that and to, like, for instance, fund groups that are going to be essentially agents of chaos in society.
Right.
So it seems like it's unavoidable unless you have some kind of incredibly rigorous system that's kind of run like a authoritarian or totalitarian on those basic principles, which is what we were trying to avoid in the West. The whole idea of liberal democracy was in opposition to the totalitarian dreams of the fascists and the communists. And in many respects, probably because we defined ourselves against those things, we've become them, just like anything that demonizes. There were reasons why people went for fascism and communism. And so to kind of paint them with really broad strokes, I think that certainly fascism is seen as essentially equivalent to evil. And that is, I think, a oversimplification of what the phenomena really is. And similarly with the totalitarianism of communism, I think that there were obvious evils that came from both of those systems, but there were very understandable reasons why they ended up as they did, And we kind of turned it into a shorthand way of referring to all of the evil in history that we were going to avoid with our liberal, free market, whatever, And it probably was part of the setup that has allowed us to fall into the exact same pattern that happened, which resulted in the totalitarianism and fascism of the past that we were posing ourselves. So it's sort of like, you become what you hate is one of those basic psychological principles that seems to be so true.
Yep.
And that's kind of the case that I've been trying to make in the interaction with this friend of mine. I'm pointing out the fascist tendencies that he's articulating through his refusal to discuss things, and kind of the anger and hatred of the other side whose position he's unwilling to even consider, you
Right.
know?
Right.
So that's a hardline stance. And I think that's precisely the stance that produces the fascist response.
Sure. Absolutely.
It's,
You know,
it's so frustrating.
it is. I was having a conversation with somebody, with my brother-in-law, a few weeks ago, and just talking about how, you know, every like when you see these some of these trends or whatever, it people are reacting to something normally, right? So there's normally a stimuli that enters into the sphere of society or an individual's life, and that stimuli triggers some sort of reaction. Normally, not like a healthy, balanced response, but some sort of knee jerk reaction. And right now, the knee jerk reaction is the other side is this side is evil, the other side is evil, everybody is evil. We have two sides screaming at each other that they're evil.
Yeah.
And they're both responding or reacting to some sort of stimuli that they're uncomfortable with.
Well, I think they're also coming at it from a place where they've been conditioned to believe in a certain set of ideas that they maybe haven't really examined that well. Like, one of the things that I've zeroed in on is the idea of stop making sense, which was, it was the name of a song by the Talking Heads. The Talking Heads
Right.
were one of the top bands for a decade, maybe more. And it was the name of their film, which is a very successful film, kind of a great film within that genre. And I think that a lot of people embrace that idea as if it were something that they could live by, So the idea that one would have a rational conversation about serious topics was essentially shunted aside for anyone who fully embraced that concept, stop making sense. And it seemed like a very appealing thing at the time. I remember kind of being inspired by it in a certain way myself for a period of time. But then recognizing just what a thin veneer that is, and that it doesn't really, and the extent to which it really serves the interests of power, it strikes me as being significant that there are so many things within the cultural domain that are essentially memes that have been propagated that function really as the basis for the situation that we find ourselves in now, where people come to embrace fashionable ideas, something that kind of sounds cool, and quite often it's delivered with a sound that is cool. So you have a really cool sound and then you have some lyrics over the top of it. It's like, well, that sounds like a really cool thing. And that's as far as the analysis goes. And the thing that's brilliant about Stop Making Sense is that it delivers the message that tells you not to look any further. So it's like you have a cool sound that tells you in a way that sounds really convincing not to think about it. And in some respects, like, if you wanted to establish a totalitarian system that didn't have all the problems that we're talking about, that would be one way of doing it. Get everyone to not really think about what's going on, what they're doing. And when you think about what ended up happening, like, for instance, the jury is out, I think, on what China really is right now. But there's no doubt that they have put together an impressive civilization in the wake of the horrors of what happened in their nation during the Cultural Revolution. Mm-hmm. So they went through a horrible period where the kind of thing that's happening here right now really took full bloom, and it was really bad. But would they have been able to rebuild their civilization had they not gone through that? And I don't know whether it's going to work out well for them or not. These are all very difficult problems. This is, I'm not saying anything about the good or bad of it. I'm just saying that they obviously are making a real play to try to get things together and to make things work for them and for the world. You know, the whole BRICS initiative is essentially an alternative to the rules-based international order, which is essentially the West telling the rest of the world what they should do and how to live, and that essentially the West gets all the goods and the rest deal with the table scraps, and that's not a good deal. So, one of the things that I think is often not really considered very much by people in the West is the extent to which all of our grand ideas are complete hypocrisy when you take a look at our foreign policy.
Yes.
The whole globalism, like kumbaya, yeah, multicultural, all that kind of stuff, where we were like, it's going to be, one world, right? And everyone's going to be dancing together. It's going to be a beautiful thing. And a lot of that also was delivered with this very effective musical background, right? We are the world. We are the children. Meanwhile, the corporations are doing these incredibly rapacious things. Governments are being overthrown. People are getting bombed. And like the world is like, oh, that's what you meant by, the rules-based international order. And now we're here in this country, complaining about our health care and talking about, gender and racial issues. And so few people are really in any way tuned into the horrible crimes that have been committed in our name, which I think most people are really not for whatsoever. But nevertheless, it is our country that's been the primary kind of global military force. So, yeah, it's a terrible, terrible situation, and people are not interested in really discussing it. On both the left and the right. I think that there are, and by the way, the left-right thing really is such a false, line of distinction. And it really is the basis for that partisanship that you're talking about. People who think in left-right terms are already trapped.
Yep. Yeah. As soon as you say one or the other, you're in it. You're stuck in it.
Yep, and it's really hard.
As soon as you choose a side, if you're choosing a side, you're stuck in it. If you're making the other an other, that's you're stuck.
Then you are confronted with this terrible. There's a song, "Which Side Are You On, Boys?" Which is kind of an old workers song. It's basically, you got to make a choice at some point or another. And in some ways, we all do eventually get squeezed to throw our weight in with one group or another. And it's an ugly moment when you really have to choose. Because if we can't resolve this problem, we will all eventually be forced to choose.
Right. And I think we're due for some deconstruction and then reconstruction, it seems like. So I think that's the path that we're inevitably on. And the more that, and this is a topic you and I have talked about extensively as well, the more that we can learn and cultivate the ability to talk to somebody, to talk to people who have the polar opposite viewpoint as us without reacting, with curiosity, with not feeling the need to believe their point, but just the ability to hear it and let it go and have rational dialogue and be curious and find out what got the other person to think the way that they think, believe the things that they believe. And eventually, I think in that process, you will find some common ground with an individual. And that is the work of our era. Really, I think absolutely. I think that is the work. There is no other work. You want to be spiritual? Do that. If you want to be a spiritual master, do that. That's like the number one thing we could do as individuals to diffuse the polarity, to start, breaking through the left-right mentality, is just be able to have a conversation. And
it's called consideration.
right.
And what it means is that you're taking into consideration the perspective of another, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the attitude that the United States has adopted towards the rest of the world, which is basically like, if you don't do it the way we want you to do it, we're going to start bombing you. It's the same thing that we do when it comes to like pests, insects and rodents and stuff like that. It's basically just kill them. Yeah, like that's basically you interfere with the way that we want to live, and basically the default setting is we have to stamp you out. And so it's that kind of exterminator attitude that I think is reflexively built into the culture. And, even the pests have an important evolutionary niche to occupy. And I think, I remember one of my neighbors telling me that he was very aggressive against the wasps. And because of that, they saw him as an enemy. And so he was constantly getting stung and had established a really bad relationship with them. And so they became, in a sense, more of a problem because you can't really get rid of them. This is their territory too. My attitude towards them has been, you're fine with me, but you can't live here. So I take a very, there've been very few instances where I've hit them with any kind of a poison. Mm-hmm. I basically just, I knock down the nests. I kind of talk to them. I occasionally get stung, but they don't have anything out against me.
Yeah. They like, haven't targeted you as like when they see you, they go after you.
So I respect them.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. They're a nuisance, but I see them as having their place in the world. It's true with all of these creatures, I don't want them living in my place, but I think they have a right to live.
Right.
And it's the same with people of different persuasions. Like there's some people who I am happy to have a conversation with, but I don't want them living in my place either. And it's good that we all have, we are lucky to have the opportunity to have our own spaces.
Right.
Well,
they say it's easier to not let somebody in than to ask them to leave. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That's a hard lesson that some people never seem to learn. So you had something that you wanted to talk about. Does that fit into where we are, or? The original topic that I wanted to bring to the table, and this was a long time ago, but because of the nature of our schedules and everything, we weren't able to sync up. But the topic of masculinity was up for me 3 months ago or so. Because I just think maybe it was even longer than that at this point. But I just think, I have a 26-year-old stepson who's great. I love him. But he's in this he's 26 and he's like a bro, right? And there's this whole bro podcaster, influencer vibe out there that portrays masculinity in one way. And some of it I think is accurate, but I think a lot of young men are being misled down a path of I don't want to say toxic masculinity, but let's say false sense of masculinity. And so so that was a topic that was kind of up for me about like, well, what is masculinity? Like is it definable? What is it? Is it, being super jacked and able to fight and you go kill your own food? And I mean, is that masculinity? Is like, or is it picking fights? Is it being a bullying your way to get what you want? Is that masculinity? And I think that's kind of
a version of masculinity that's portrayed to our younger generation right now, unfortunately. And I think you see it in movies, you see it in Hollywood, and you see it in, you know, uh, the mainstream culture right now. I think, and some maybe not
It's
the
always
mainstream
been
culture.
it's always
Is
been a
it
part of every
right?
culture.
Right.
Every culture has had to cultivate the capacity to do violence. That's just, it's a fact of history. So even if we look back at the Bhagavad Gita, right,
Right.
in many
Sure.
respects, that is a spiritual text which is about, the role of the warrior and how one is to get right in the head in order to do the deeds that need to be done in battle, some of which are pretty freaking horrible, and some of which may involve the harm of people who you care about. That's one of the kind of premises of the whole text, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's two families going to war against each other, right?
Right.
Cousins
Which is,
at
in
war with
essence, the
each other.
story of humanity.
Yeah, totally. Right.
Now, can we get beyond that? We're apparently quite a long ways off from getting beyond that. There's been all kinds of talk about getting beyond that, but
Well,
I don't see it
yeah.
happening.
I think we are unfortunately incapable of learning from history and
Or maybe it's just the
our
way it
past
is.
failures. Yeah, and yeah, right, exactly. Like, is that just how it is, and it'll never be any different? And can we at least get along enough not to kill the planet,
Right.
and go extinct?
Well, I've had this theory for a while that the rapaciousness that we have exploited the planet is actually an effort for us to stop fighting with each other. That we took a lot of the aggression that brought so much pain and trauma to us and found ways of producing technology and of doing various things that would, in a certain sense, exercise that energy, and that a consequence of that is this kind of using up of the world and the transformation of the world. Again, like, if that is true, it's completely understandable, So I'm not sure that there's a way around it without dramatic population reduction. That's really, unfortunately, you know,
I said those exact words to Antoinette last night.
really.
Literally. Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm not in
Yeah.
favor of it, but I also see that, there's a lot of people who really reactively, on the right, actually, whatever the hell that means. A lot of people on the right think that this whole idea that there's too many people on the planet is insanity. I mean, it just seems obvious to me that we're really running up against the limits of what the natural world can handle, and that many of the systems that life depend upon are being threatened by our activity, and that if there were fewer of us, that activity would not be as much of a burden. It's just so obviously the case. That's not to say that there should be some kind of a extermination program, but it looks like some people are trying that.
Oh God, yes. Wow. Yes, it does, doesn't it? And I think it's how it came up with Antoinette last night was that we were just talking about. I said I really think I fear that we have passed the tipping point in on this planet, not from a carbon standpoint, which is what I think gets all the attention, but from a chemical standpoint and pollution standpoint.
Yeah.
Right.
The
And
pervasiveness of so many non-organic compounds, just molecules that we're really not adapted to. And there's just tens, if not hundreds of thousands of them now. And we really don't understand how they interact or what they're doing to us precisely. We understand some of them, but there's so many of them. I don't
Well,
see how you could. I mean, they talk about drug interactions, right? So you're not supposed to take certain subs. I don't think they even understand that particularly well. But then, you know, the things which are not designed to be taken internally, we're still all exposed to all the time, and we don't even know how they're affecting us individually, let alone
right.
in this cocktail of stuff that we're constantly being exposed to.
The only way that their toxicity is tested is alone. But when
Right.
you combine chemicals, it increases their toxicity by magnitudes, right? And so
Yeah.
we're exposed to, you know, one statistic that I read. I was creating a course for work, and I was diving into chemicals released into the environment since World War II, and over 88,000 synthetic chemicals. And it may be more now, but
88,000.
88,000 synthetic chemicals have been released into our environment since World War II.
It's like good luck getting familiarized with a few hundred of them.
Right? Right. And
Right.
and so many of these are hormone disruptors, or xenoestrogens. And so for like men, what's happening is testosterone is decreasing, estrogen is increasing. So it's men are getting higher levels of estrogen than they should.
So this folds back into the masculinity question, you
right,
know?
exactly. Like there are so many factors that are influencing it that are outside of our control. Let alone we have this, you have a Hollywood agenda, media agenda of, and what I would call actually what I would call a medical agenda of this transgender movement, which I think is the medical establishment preying on insecure people for the sake of profit and to advance some sort of, human hubris of look what we can do. Look what we figured out that we can do.
Yeah, it's maybe part of that. It may also be part of the sort of divide and conquer mechanism because it's essentially creating yet another way in which the population is irreparably divided.
Right.
And
one more, because we need one more, right? We need one more way
the more
to
the
divide
merrier.
people, right? Yeah.
The more the merrier.
Yeah. So
the more miserable, really. That's what it really is.
Right.
Yeah.
So
every wedge issue is another source of misery.
Yeah.
For the population, but I think also it sets up a psychological condition that can be leveraged in the end game, where the real play for a kind of totalitarian system gets implemented. Because when that kind of thing is done to people, it puts them into a psychologically impossible state, and some of the people will be able to be their anger and fear and all of the complex emotions that are very difficult to untangle can be leveraged into getting them to do certain things that would not be done otherwise. That's one of the things that really frightens me about that whole movement, is that it can create some extremely brutal people who are out for revenge and who may pick targets that really have nothing whatsoever to do with the condition they find themselves in.
Sure. Yeah. Well, 100%. They're not thinking clearly by any means.
Right. And in some sense, they can't afford to think clearly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you keep people in a survival mode and then you one, just keeping people in a survival mode, they're not going to think clearly.
Yeah.
Right.
Fight or flight.
That's right. You're stuck in fight or flight. And the basic default mode network of fight or flight is self-preservation.
Right.
So everybody's walking around stuck in fight or flight, self-preservation. They care less and less and less about their fellow human beings because, hell, they're just trying to fucking make it through the day.
Right.
you know,
And we
and
have to wonder whether this is just a natural byproduct of population density. You know, it's tempting to think of this as being a program that's been set up by powerful interests in order to divide the population, but it could also be that, well, those types of programs get set up by powerful interests because that is what naturally occurs within systems that are experiencing, let's say, resource crises with dense populations and systems which are starting to fall apart.
right,
And so as
right,
these like relationships start to unravel, there's more and more competition, which reduces the value of your neighbor because in a monetary system, everyone's value is dependent upon the extent to which they're going to be helping you in your pursuit of the money, right? And so when they're no longer able to fulfill that, then they have less value in a system that is essentially dependent upon this mark of value, right? So there's your, money, the root of all evil.
excuse me.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know. It's trying to figure out how
no,
to steer this away from just being one gigantic black pill.
I know.
It gets harder and
Yeah.
harder,
It
like
does. I mean, I
when you
think we
see a
just have
glimmer
to
of,
come to terms with the fact that we are at a point where it's just a black pill right now that we have to navigate our way through right now. I mean, what I was, and just to kind of follow up with kind of where my thoughts were coming from, also is that, I just think that we have, I guess this could be more black pill. We've passed the tipping point. We've really passed the tipping point. I mean, the amount of dependence we have on synthetic chemicals, the amount of plastics in our environment, the amount of forever chemicals in our environment, we're just starting to wake up to that now. Like reports are just now coming out saying, there are these forever chemicals, in your Apple Watch's wristband or in on your waterproof coat and your all this shit that we're dependent on now. You know, we are we are dependent on this on these chemicals.
yeah, and the
And
willingness to. So in the fire service, this is a big issue because the turnouts
right,
have all the
sure,
PFAS on it,
right,
and
right,
everyone knows that there's an extremely high cancer rate amongst the fire service, right? And I listened to RFK Jr.'s interview with a fireman who is trying to raise awareness about this. And since I'm on the safety committee of the fire department locally here, I thought this was the perfect topic to bring to the attention of the safety committee. They're not interested in discussing it.
of course not. Of course not. Well, here's the thing. What are they going to do? What are they going to do about it? Do they make the equipment they use? No, right? It's like,
Yeah, and probably I think they recently bought new turnouts for everyone, and so that's probably an investment that they got through a grant. And so the capacity of having, once you open up that thing, that it's
yeah,
they may not be eligible for another grant for a certain number of years to. So the number of obstacles towards this new awareness of all of these issues actually turning into some kind of change in policy. Like you see what's happening now with the hearings on RFK's appointment. At this point, I don't even know if I want RFK to win. I kind of
mhm,
feel like the inertia is so intense and the corruption is so deep that there's a very good chance that he's going to end up being a fall guy, and that would be a huge disaster for this, new movement of whatever you want to call it, Maha, or this health movement that's I think significant right now. There's a lot of people who are really motivated to to really do something about it this time. And I could see it really getting sidetracked just because of the way the bureaucracy is, and the special interests have so much influence and so much power, and they'll stop at nothing essentially to, for whatever reason, whether it's profit or some other agenda, they really don't want things to change. They really went hard on him today to get him to promise that he wasn't going to interfere with the vaccine schedule. And they essentially got him to promise that he wouldn't change the vaccine schedule. He inserted a kind of provision to that, saying essentially, well, if you can show me the data, then yes, I will agree to, at the very end of the hearing, if you listen all the way through 3 hours, at the very end of it. Yeah, no, I mean, I barely made it to the end. And the only reason I did is because I was doing other stuff while I was listening. And it was just brutal to listen to it. But I did listen to the whole thing. And at the very end, there was a little bit of conversation with the head of the committee where he said, well, you can show me your data, but I would want you to take into consideration the data that I'm seeing as well. There was a little bit of back and forth on that, right? But in a way, they don't care about that. That was really the fundamental message was we have an agenda here. And there were a lot of people on that, including Bernie Sanders, which was really like, I mean, I've lost respect for Bernie for a long time, but this was the end. Like, it's just like, oh man, how far he has fallen. But the real talking point with all of these folks, with the exception of the few who were there really supportive of the Maha agenda, and I have some problems with them as well, but everyone who was opposed to RFK was all about the vaccines.
That's their only topic. That's the only.
I know. It's like that for them, health equals vaccines.
Right. Which is insane. I mean, it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah.
So, we're the supplement industry, for the most part, and I won't speak, I guess I can't speak for the entire supplement industry, but I can speak for a lot of people that I've spoken with who either own companies or are high up in companies, are all excited about the prospect of an RFK Jr. Head of Health and Human Services, because to level the playing field a little bit for preventive medicine and preventive wellness and lifestyle medicine, and getting the toxins out of our food that the FDA has just become a green light for anything that gets created for the most part. There's money, great. They just banned red dye number 5 finally.
Right. How many years was that?
Right.
We've known about that for decades, right?
We've known it causes cancer at least as long as I've been in this industry, and that's since the mid 90s.
Right.
Right.
So, only 88,000 more to go. Right.
Right.
If each one takes 10 years, then we have a pretty good sense of where we are.
where we'll be, right? Exactly. Oh, Noah. It's a big black pill right now.
Yeah, it seems like this is an episode of just belly aching. And
sorry, everybody.
I would be completely on board with the Maha initiative if I weren't so aware of all of the games that can be played to not only undermine a movement, but to essentially turn it into something that re-legitimizes the status quo.
Right.
And that's what I'm really afraid of. And in a certain sense, Bernie already said that. Bernie said, if we see an increase in childhood diseases after an RFK HHS administration has changed all of the policies, it's going to be on your head. That's basically what he told RFK, And it's like, if you think of all the inertia of all these things that are happening, it's inevitable that childhood disease is going to get worse. So, like, even if RFK is able to implement all of these changes that are actually good, we're going to be looking at numbers that make it look like it's getting worse.
Well, I mean, we already have a generation now that will be the first generation in our history that will not have the same lifespan as their parents. They will have a shorter lifespan than their parents, and that is already happening. Childhood obesity off the charts. Childhood diabetes, cancer, leukemia, like all these things are staggering right now. Autism, the rise of autism. I'm not going to go out and say that it is vaccine related or solely vaccine related. A vaccine might be a trigger for it, but it's a combination of genetics and environment. And so,
we got 87,999 other possibilities.
Right.
Roughly speaking. You know what I mean? But vaccines certainly are one of those possibilities. And there's a lot of circumstantial data that they could have been doing research on, and they haven't been, which makes it seem kind of suspicious. But yeah, we don't know. We don't really know.
No.
But yeah, I mean, the thing that's also kind of outrageous about all of this is that on the other end of the spectrum, there are, transhumanists now who are talking about living forever, like, so we're so out of balance, it's just, it couldn't be more insane. And every day there's another insane thing happening added to the mix that just creates ever more chaos, like there was this weird crash that happened yesterday that is strange, and who knows what it means. It might not mean anything, but it is another thing and it's almost like every single day there is another whoa, just folded into the mix. And a chaotic system is extremely difficult to manage. So if you're getting into a position where your job is to sort of fix the chaos, and every day there's another chaotic element that gets thrown in. Like, I think that the Trump administration had pinned all of their hopes in terms of like the United States maintaining a competitive edge on the world market and balancing the budget on their AI development. And a few days ago, DeepSeek was released by the Chinese that essentially completely undermined that entire effort. It's an open source, free AI app that is as good as OpenAI and costs a fraction of what it costs OpenAI to do their training. Like, they just got completely, their legs got cut out from underneath them. So,
good.
And the whole question of whether or not AI is something that we should even be doing, it has been completely forgotten. And what the consequences are, because the arms race is on now. And basically, all the guys at OpenAI who were involved in safety and alignment, they quit. Because, and in a certain sense, all of this, again, makes perfect sense. You can't really compete if there are no restraints on your competition. So you can't do it safely if your competition is not going to abide by any kind of safety rules. And so all of that is getting thrown out the window in a race to achieve this kind of, let's just call it a singularity. You could call it AGI, or there's a number of different words for it, but the first one who gets there wins, basically. That's kind of where it's at. And what exactly it means to win in that environment, I'm really not precisely sure. It seems to me to be, in many respects, a race to the bottom, because the the more we rely upon the intelligence of the machines that we've designed, the less our own intelligence is going to play a role in whatever it is that happens. And so, in essence, you could say that the agency of the human being is gradually being whittled away, or really not gradually, I would say rather rapidly being whittled away by the race to develop this final artificial intelligence. I'm smelling something that suggests that maybe I forgot to turn off the stove. Let me just take a quick look. Oh, yeah, I did it again.
Whoops! I did it again.
It looks like something is smoking there too. Did you sneak a smoke while I was gone?
I did.
Oh my God. Sneaky bastard. You realize this is being recorded, right?
I do. Go ahead.
I'm amazed at how many podcasts have guys who are sitting there sucking away on their vape pens.
Right. Their vape pens, or even just smoking doobies. So
I guess that's the thing too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's some people who you wouldn't even expect. Like if you watch long enough, you'll see that they'll sneak it in at some point or another.
Well, it's so easy anymore, you know?
I guess so.
Oh, it's ridiculously easy. You can travel with it. You fly with it. You take it with you everywhere you go. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah. Thank God. Thank God.
Guess.
I mean,
I don't know.
From my perspective,
I don't know about that. I kind of feel like it falls into the stop making sense category.
Well, hey, you can have a drink everywhere you go for the most part, right?
That's true, but that's also stop making sense.
That's
usually. Actually, some people make more sense when they have a few.
That's true. They start to
they get honest.
Right, exactly. Little truth serum in there.
Yeah.
You know? I know it, man. I think I do. I fear for humanity. I really think we've pushed ourselves past the point of no return, chemically, environmentally, not just carbon gas, but all the chemicals, everything that's happening, the global dysbiosis that's happening.
And for those of you who have not listened to it, I recommend you go and find the episode where Judah presents his global dysbiosis theory, which I think it's really more than a theory. I think it's an observation on the reality of what's happening on planet Earth, and how that the things that we're suffering internally ourselves are being played out writ large on the entire planet. And yeah, dysbiosis, I think that's precisely it. And okay, so let's see if we can bring this home with a somewhat kind of, stand back spiritual, larger evolutionary perspective, because obviously life on planet Earth has gone through some radical changes, and there are these choke points in evolutionary history where everything changes. And that seems to be part of the story of life, that's unavoidable.
That's right. So, and the other unfortunate part of that story is usually there is some sort of population decline that happens. There's some sort of cataclysmic event that triggers this. And so whether that cataclysmic event is a natural event, or if it's human hubris and human created, and that's what happens. And we've been through cycles before as a species, as a collective, and I think we're heading for another one. That's inevitable. There's no turning it around. There's no turning this ship around right now.
Yeah, I think that the ship could go in a number of different directions, and it may split into pieces that head in different directions. But it seems to me that the most difficult thing that people have is living with uncertainty. And, particularly as life gets more chaotic and you feel more uncertain about your own life, uncertainty takes on a much more profound meaning. So, how do we deal with that? How do we
Right.
confront the reality? I think that in the ancient world, there was a far more natural acceptance of the end of the road whenever it was reached, like traditionally, sometimes people would recognize that for whatever reason, whether it was they were just getting a little bit too old for the things that needed to happen, like their time had come, they would go out into the woods and find a spot and sit down and let themselves go. What
Yep.
I think that we don't really have that conception. We have this kind of fight till the end attitude, and you know, I suppose that all the bros on those podcasts are getting themselves ready for that fight. And it's like, okay, give it your best shot, man. Like, as with most things, it's sort of like, only one sperm gets to the egg. Well, maybe a few, but there's a few that might make it. Most of us won't. And,
Right.
and ultimately, we all don't make it at some point. Life is just a series of choices, and at some point or another, there's no choices left. It's just the way it is. And let's get comfortable with it and make the best of it. Do as good of a ride as you possibly can. Don't get freaked out by it, because this is all natural stuff.
Right. This is life, and it's going to every one of us is going to come to our own natural end. Embrace that. Don't be afraid of that. Don't run from that. I'm not. And I'm a little. You just triggered another thought for me, and this might be a different podcast, but I think there's a lot of anxiety in humanity around legacy, leaving a legacy of some sort. What's the legacy you're going to leave? Are you creating generational wealth? There's a lot about legacy. And I think as men and the masculinity thing, just to kind of come full circle with this, there's a lot tied up in leaving some sort of legacy. And I think fighting to the bitter end is, that's kind of become this thing that's looked up upon, of like, yeah, he fought to the bitter end, and never mind the wake of destruction that he left behind him doing it.
Yeah.
He did it. But there's a saying that comes to mind that I heard Dennis Klochek say once, and he said, a great definition for pious would be would be knowing that you don't know. Like if you're, when we're looking at this situation, like I know I don't know what it all is really happening and what do I really need to know that's happening. But I know that when I need to know something, I'll know. And that's kind of like taking your hands off the steering wheel and kind of just trusting in the natural evolution of this experiment. And if it is all the mind of God unfolding, if it is infinite consciousness unfolding, like the Vedas say, I'd rather just put my trust in that than anything, and just let go of the steering wheel. Jesus, take the wheel. I'm good. I'll unfold. I'll live my life. I'll do the best I can. I'll pass on. Life will keep going. And the mind of God or infinite consciousness will continue down its path, and things will either, come to an end or a blocking point, and then they'll open back up. It will contract and it will expand. That is what will inevitably happen. It always does happen, and that's inevitably what will happen. We're just playing out a play that we are over dramatizing right now.
Exactly.
You know?
Amen. 100%.
Yeah, that's what I think. We're over dramatizing the whole fucking thing.
All right. Well, I think that's a perfect way to cap this, because I think, uh, when you're thinking about these issues, it's good to go as deep as you can, and it's good to not dwell on it too much. And that's a perfect way of putting it into perspective, putting it in the right place. So we've come to an understanding about the situation, and now we see a path forward. What more could you ask for?
There's one thing, Noah, and I don't think you have it right now, and that is the sound of silence.
We're working our way there.
Remember when you had the
Yeah, the
mixer
assembly of silence moment.
the assembly
Yeah.
of silence moment.
It really is missing
It
from
is.
this.
Yes.
We don't have the ability to make it we could do it,
Can you
in the
add
post.
it in?
We could
Can
do it
you
in
add it
post.
in?
But yeah, we could do it in post. You want to just
Awesome.
let's see.
Post production.
Yeah. Here, I'll get a
And by the way, sorry I was late today.
oh, that's all right.
I was out with my little guy, Henry. I took him to the movies. He was
Oh, cool.
sick.
What'd you see?
We went and saw Mufasa in 3D, which
hell
is
is that?
like Mufasa is like the backstory on the Lion King. So it's in the future from the Lion King, and it's the grandson of the Lion King as a little lion cub hearing the story of his grandfather Mufasa, and it was really good. But we watched it in 3D in the movie theater, and it was so fun. Like Henry was like, "Oh, oh,"
Wow.
like it was
That's
really
cool.
Yeah,
I have no idea about the Lion King.
yeah.
This is what happens when you don't have kids.
I know, right? You're not missing too much, don't worry.
Really? Even the 3D version?
No.
I haven't seen a movie in a long time either.
Oh, go see Nosferatu.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Is it it's a new Nosferatu?
Yeah.
All right.
Very well done. It's really well done. I highly recommend it.
So the vampire memes have returned.
Yes, they have.
Great.
They have. Yeah.
That always bodes well for
I know. Well,
yeah. Where we're heading as a civilization.
It's interesting. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. So
all right. Should we attempt some kind of assembly of silence moment before we sign off? And I'll do something in the post.
Sure, that sounds good. You might want to delete some of this. I don't know.
I might.
Oh, we have one of those. Well, I can't hear it.
I don't hear you doing anything, dude. Lame ass assembly of silence.
Oh, was I supposed to do something? I was listening for your rattle.
You don't hear it?
No, I couldn't hear it.
You can't hear this?
No, I couldn't hear it at all. It's totally silent. Yeah, totally silent.
I hear it fine.
Yeah, I don't hear it
Zoom
at all.
filtering out all the noise.
Yeah.
Hey, Zoom. Stop. All right, fuck it. Can't even do an assembly of silence moment anymore. Technology will not allow it.
What has life come to? Oh my God. Good talking with you as always.
Totally, man. Thanks for reaching out and coming back, and we'll do another one whenever you feel like it, man.
Well, let's do another one, and we'll button it up way more. We'll have all right, we'll button it up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, or not.
Oh, not. That sounds good.
Anything else you want to talk about now
No,
that the episode is over?
now the episode's over. No, I'm good. We can.
All right, Judah. Great to see you, man. That
Great
was
to see you
fun.
too. Yeah, man. You
Yeah.
take care.
Thanks for the convo.
Yep. Thank you.
Adios.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.